Dr. Kim Miho stared at the wilted tomato plants on his desk and sighed. For 3 months, he had been trying to make vegetables grow faster in his small laboratory at the Terra Agricultural Research Station. Every experiment failed. The funding committee would review his project next week, and he had nothing to show them except dead plants and pages of useless calculations. Maybe I should just give up, he muttered to himself, pushing his thick glasses up his nose. Outside the window, Earth looked beautiful from the space station, but Miho felt like a failure. Other scientists were discovering new planets and inventing amazing technologies. He was just trying to make carrots grow a little faster. His assistant, Lee Juna, knocked on the door. Dr. Kim, the supply ship brought new fertilizer samples. Should I put them in storage? Just leave them on the counter, Miho said, without looking up from his notebook. He was scribbling equations that made no sense, trying to figure out why his quantum growth formula kept producing impossible numbers. According to his math, plants should be able to grow through time itself, which was obviously ridiculous. Juna set down 3 bottles of experimental fertilizer and paused. Doctor, are you okay? You look tired. I'm fine, Miho lied. Just working on something that will probably never work. After Juna left, Miho sat alone with his thoughts. His grandmother used to have the most beautiful garden on earth. She would talk to her plants like they were her children, telling them stories and singing old songs. When Miho was young, he thought his grandmother was a little crazy. Now he wished he had paid more attention to her methods. All right, little tomatoes, he said to the dying plants, feeling foolish. Let's try one more time. But I'm going to do this my grandmother's way. He picked up the first bottle of quantum fertilizer and mixed it with water, just like his calculations suggested. But instead of measuring everything precisely, he added drops until it felt right. His scientific training told him this was wrong, but his grandmother had always said cooking and gardening were about feeling, not measuring. Grow for me, he whispered to the plants as he poured the mixture into their soil. I know you're tired, but please try one more time. I need you to help me help other people. The moment the liquid touched the dirt, something strange happened. The air around the plant began to shimmer, like heat waves on a summer day. Miho blinked hard, thinking his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. But the shimmering continued, and then he saw something that made him drop the empty bottle. The tomato plants were growing, not slowly like normal plants, but fast enough that he could actually watch them get bigger. Their stems stretched upward, leaves unfurled, and tiny green tomatoes began to appear and swell. In less than 5 minutes, he had full-grown tomato plants with ripe, red fruit hanging from their branches. That's impossible, Miho whispered, backing away from his desk. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. The plants were still there, still fully grown, still defying everything he knew about biology and physics. But the strangest part was the roots. Somehow, he could see them even though they were underground. They glowed faintly through the soil, and they didn't just grow down into the pot. They seemed to stretch out into the air itself, creating ripples in space like stones thrown into a calm pond. Miho's hands shook as he reached for a scanner. The device beeped frantically when he pointed it at the plants, displaying readings that made no sense. According to the scanner, the plants existed in multiple dimensions at once, their roots somehow extending through folded space-time. Juna, he called out, his voice cracking with excitement and fear. Juna, come here right now. His assistant rushed back into the lab. When she saw the fully grown plants, her mouth fell open. Dr. Kim, what did you do? These were dying 5 minutes ago. I don't know, Miho admitted. I just talked to them and used grandmother's method instead of following the exact formula. Juna walked slowly around the desk, staring at the impossible plants. The roots, she whispered. Why can I see the roots glowing in the air? Before Miho could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the space station. The intercom crackled to life with Commander Park Jaiwa's voice. All personnel, we have an unidentified spatial distortion in Laboratory 7. Dr. Kim, please respond immediately. Miho looked at his plants, then at Juna, then at his plants again. I think, he said slowly, we might have accidentally broken the laws of physics. 3 days later, ships appeared outside the space station. They didn't look like any human vessels Miho had ever seen. The aliens who emerged were tall and graceful, with skin that looked like flowing water and eyes that seemed to hold starlight. "We are from the Agricultural Oversight Consortium," their leader announced in perfect Korean, though its mouth moved strangely. "We detected impossible quantum fluctuations from this location. Show us what you have done." When they saw Mio's tomato plants, the aliens became very quiet. Finally, their leader spoke again, its voice filled with something that sounded like fear. "Human, do you understand what you have achieved? This is dimensional cultivation. Most species require 40,000 years of evolution to develop such abilities." Miho looked at his simple tomato plants and shrugged. "I just asked them nicely to grow." The Grand Assembly Hall looked like something from a strange dream. Creatures of all shapes and sizes filled the enormous floating chamber, some sitting on chairs, others hanging from the ceiling, and a few just floating in balls of light. The Galactic Gardening Guild had never called an emergency meeting before, but the news from Earth had shocked everyone. Elder Vorthak stood at the center platform, his bark-like skin creaking as he moved. He looked like a walking tree, ancient and wise, with leaves that changed color when he felt strong emotions. Right now, those leaves were turning bright red with anger. "Fellow gardeners," he began, his voice deep like wind through old forests, "we face a crisis unlike any in our 50,000 years of existence. A young species called humans has somehow achieved what we thought impossible." Around the hall, hundreds of different beings whispered and clicked and hummed to each other. The crystal people from Kepler, 442b, made musical sounds like wind chimes. The floating gas creatures from the nebula gardens pulsed with worried colors. Everyone was confused and frightened. Council Speaker Lim D felt very small standing on the platform. She was the only human in the entire assembly, wearing simple work clothes while surrounded by beings who looked like living gods. Her black hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her hands were still dirty from working in her garden that morning. "Show them the recordings," Elder Vorthak commanded. A holographic display appeared above the assembly, showing Dr. Kim Miho's laboratory. The aliens watched in silence as the recording played, showing impossible tomato plants growing in minutes instead of months. They saw the glowing roots that bent space and time, creating ripples in reality itself. "This is beyond science," whispered Krista Nine, the representative from the Crystal Farms. Her body was made of living diamonds that sparkled when she spoke. "We spend centuries convincing minerals to accept organic life. These humans made rocks sprout vegetables in hours." A creature that looked like floating seaweed with eyes spoke next. "The kelp shepherds of Atlantis Prime have guided our ocean gardens for millennia. We thought we understood the deepest mysteries of growth and life. But this changes everything." Elder Vorthak's leaves rustled with frustration. "Our ancestors learned to speak with trees through meditation and patience. We spent thousands of years understanding how to ask plants to grow slowly, wisely, with respect for natural timing. These humans are making forests appear from nothing." All eyes turned to Dahi. She felt nervous but tried to stand straight and speak clearly. "Honored guild members, I know this looks impossible, but Dr. Kim's methods aren't magic. They're just different from yours." "Different?" Elder Vorthak's trunk creaked as he leaned forward. "Child, your species has existed for only a few thousand years. We have been gardeners since before your son was born. You cannot simply ignore millions of years of wisdom." He took a deep breath. "Maybe that's the problem. You're all so focused on doing things the old way that you forgot plants might want to try something new." The assembly erupted in chaos. Creatures hissed, clicked, hummed, and flashed angry colors. A being made of living metal clanged, like a broken bell. "Impossible. Plants do not want anything. They simply follow natural laws." "But what if they do want things?" Dee asked, raising her voice above the noise. "What if all this time you've been treating plants like they can't think or feel or choose?" Elder Vorthak slammed his root feet on the platform, making the entire hall shake. "Plants are not conscious beings. They are living matter that responds to proper cultivation techniques developed over eons of careful study. Have you ever just asked them what they need?" He said quietly. The hall fell silent. Hundreds of alien gardeners stared at the small human woman, who had just asked the most ridiculous question they had ever heard. Crystanine's diamond body dimmed with confusion. Ask them? Plants cannot answer questions. They have no language, no thoughts, no desires beyond basic biological functions. That's what we used to think too, he replied. But Dr. Kim discovered that when you really care about plants, when you worry about them and hope for them and talk to them like friends, something amazing happens. They start talking back. A creature that looked like a walking flower garden stood up in the back of the hall. The bloom tenders of Paradise 7 have nurtured the same flowers for 10,000 years. Never once have they spoken to us. Maybe, he suggested, they've been trying to speak to you, but you weren't listening in the right way. Elder Vorthax's leaves turned from red to deep purple, a color that meant he was thinking very hard about something he didn't want to believe. You claim that plants have consciousness? That they can communicate? That they can choose to grow in ways that violate physical laws? I'm saying maybe the physical laws aren't as fixed as you think, he answered. Maybe the universe is more alive and more flexible than any of us realized. Maybe it's been waiting for someone to ask nicely instead of just giving orders. The silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, a tiny voice from somewhere in the hall asked, "How do we learn to ask nicely?" He smiled. Start by believing they can hear you. Then tell them what you need and listen for their answer. But most importantly, remember that good gardening starts with love, not rules. Elder Vorthax's leaves slowly turned from purple to a soft green color that meant wonder. For the first time in 50,000 years, the ancient gardener felt like a student again. 6 months after Dr. Kim Miho's discovery, every human colony in the solar system was buzzing with excitement. The news had spread faster than anyone expected, carried by traders, scientists, and curious colonists who wanted to try the impossible gardening methods for themselves. On Mars, colonist Lee Sun-ho stood inside his agricultural dome, staring at what used to be nothing but red dirt and metal walls. Just 1 week ago, this place had looked like every other Mars facility, cold, empty, and lifeless. Now it looked like a piece of Earth's most beautiful countryside had been transported across space. "I still can't believe this worked," he said to his wife, Park Minji, who was picking ripe strawberries from plants that had grown from seeds just 3 days earlier. According to every manual I read, Mars soil is supposed to be toxic to most Earth plants. Minji laughed as she bit into a strawberry that was somehow sweeter than any she had ever tasted on Earth. Maybe the manuals were wrong. Or maybe the plants just needed someone to believe in them. Sun-ho had followed Dr. Kim's instructions exactly. He mixed the quantum fertilizer according to basic recipe, but then he did something that felt strange for a trained engineer. He ignored all the precise measurements and added drops until it felt right. Then he planted the seeds and talked to them like they were his children. "Grow strong," he had whispered to the tiny seeds. "Mars is your home now, and we need you to help us make it beautiful. I know the soil is different here, but I believe you can adapt. I believe you can make this place green." The results had shocked everyone on the colony. Not only did the plants grow impossibly fast, but they seemed to change themselves to fit their new environment. The tomatoes developed thicker skins to handle the lower atmospheric pressure. The wheat grew shorter but produced more grain. The apple trees somehow figured out how to survive in the reduced gravity. Meanwhile, on asteroid mining platform Delta 7, Commander Choi Myri was dealing with an even stranger situation. Her floating greenhouse pods had become the most productive food source in the entire outer system, but nobody could explain how they worked. "The plants are growing in zero gravity," she reported to Earth Command during her weekly call. "Not only that, but they seem to enjoy it. The tomatoes are growing in perfect spirals. The beans are creating these amazing floating vine networks. And the lettuce has learned to grow in three-dimensional clusters instead of flat heads." Dr. Kim Miho's voice came through the communication system, filled with wonder. "How are you talking to them in space? Do they respond differently?" "That's the interesting part," Myri replied, floating next to a cucumber plant that was somehow growing in a perfect sphere shape. "I tell them about space, about how beautiful the stars look, about how free we feel up here without gravity holding us down. And they seem to listen. They seem to want to be part of our space adventure. The breakthrough that amazed everyone came from an unexpected source. Nam Hyok was just a maintenance engineer on Luna Base, not a scientist or a farmer. He lived in a tiny room that barely had space for a bed and a small desk. But he wanted to try growing some vegetables to make his meals more interesting. Following the instructions he had downloaded from Earth, Hyok mixed up some quantum fertilizer and planted a few seeds in a small pot. But his room was so cramped that there was nowhere for the plants to grow. "I'm sorry," he said to the seeds as he watered them. "I know this space is too small for you. I wish I could give you a whole garden, but this tiny room is all I have. If only this place was bigger." The next morning, Hyok woke up to find that his room had somehow become larger. Not the physical walls. Those were still in the same place. But inside, the space seemed to stretch out like it was much bigger than it should be. In the center of this impossible expanded room stood a full-grown oak tree, its branches reaching toward a ceiling that looked like open sky. "Computer," Hyok called out, his voice shaking. "Run a structural scan of my quarters." "Scan complete," the computer replied. "Living space dimensions remain unchanged at 3 meters by 2 meters. However, internal spatial readings indicate approximately 2 hectares of agricultural area." Scientists from Earth rushed to Luna Base to study what became known as the first pocket garden dimension. Hyok tried to explain what had happened, but even he didn't really understand it. "I just told the room I needed more space for the plants," he said for the 100th time, and somehow it listened. The walls are still in the same place, but inside feels like a whole farm. Dr. Kim Miho studied the readings and shook his head in amazement. The plants didn't just grow faster or adapt to their environment. They somehow convinced reality itself to bend around their needs. They created space where there wasn't any. News of humanity's impossible agriculture began spreading beyond the solar system. Alien traders who visited human colonies brought back stories that their own people didn't believe. They talked about humans who could make forests appear overnight, who could grow food in places where nothing should live, who could somehow make plants that defied the basic laws of physics. The universe was about to discover that humans had a very different relationship with the natural world than anyone had imagined. The economic collapse began quietly on the trade world of Commerce Prime. For 800 years, the Centauri wheat lords had controlled grain production across 17 star systems. Their golden wheat fields stretched across entire continents on dozens of worlds, feeding billions of beings throughout the galaxy. They had grown rich and powerful, believing their monopoly would last forever. Then the first shipment of human wheat arrived. Trade Master Klaxon examined the samples with his 4 eyes, each one focusing on a different aspect of the grain. The wheat looked normal enough, but his scanner showed readings that made no sense. "This is impossible," he muttered in his clicking language. "According to these tests, this wheat contains 3 times more nutrition than our premium grain, and it was grown in just 2 weeks. His assistant, a young Centauri named Zipzak, nodded nervously. "The human traders say they can produce as much wheat in 1 month as we grow in a full year, and they claim it tastes better too." Klaxon's face turned a deep purple color. That meant he was very angry. "Taste it," he commanded. Zipzak took a small bite of the human wheat, and his eyes went wide. "Sir, this is the most delicious grain I have ever eaten. It's sweet and nutty and somehow makes me feel stronger just from eating it." Within 6 months, human agricultural products had flooded the galactic markets. The proud veggie merchants of Alpha Centauri watched helplessly as their perfectly shaped vegetables sat unsold, while customers lined up for strangely colored human produce that somehow tasted like sunshine and happiness. The fruit kings of the Orion Nebula faced bankruptcy when human apples that glowed with soft light proved not only more delicious, but also capable of curing common space sickness. Their traditional fruit, which had taken decades to perfect, suddenly seemed boring and lifeless by comparison. Trade Minister Yoon Seo-jun stood before the Galactic Commerce Authority, facing angry accusations from dozens of species whose entire economies had been built on food production. The massive hall buzzed with translated complaints in hundreds of languages. "The humans must be cheating," declared Representative Klaxon, his 4 eyes glaring at Seo-jun. "No species can develop such advanced agriculture so quickly." They must be using forbidden technology or dangerous chemicals. Seo Jun remained calm despite the hostile crowd. He was a small man with gentle eyes and work-worn hands, looking very ordinary compared to the exotic alien merchants around him. Honor representatives, I assure you we are not using any forbidden technology. We are simply applying techniques that come naturally to our species. Natural? Screeched a bird-like creature from the Seed Syndicate. Our ancestors spent millions of years evolving the perfect growing methods. You expect us to believe humans discovered better techniques in less than 1 year. We didn't discover them, Seojin replied quietly. We remembered them. My grandmother could make any plant grow healthy and strong just by singing to it. We had forgotten that wisdom, but Dr. Kim helped us remember. The accusations grew louder and more desperate. The Galaxy Spice Cartel claimed humans were using mind control to make their herbs more flavorful. The Universal Vegetable Union demanded that human produce be tested for dangerous modifications. The Ancient Grain Alliance threatened to ban all human agricultural products from their systems. But while the powerful agricultural corporations complained, secret messages were flooding Earth's communication networks. These weren't from the rich trading companies. They were from worlds that had been ignored and forgotten by the galactic food system. Dr. Han Jiziak, who now led Earth's agricultural outreach program, received thousands of desperate requests every day. His small office was filled with holographic messages from beings he had never seen before, all begging for help. Please, whisper a message from a thin, gray creature whose planet was dying from crop failure. Our children are starving. The guild says our soil is too poor to grow good food, but we have heard humans can make plants grow anywhere. Can you help us? Another message came from a water world where the inhabitants lived on floating cities. The Galactic Food Authority says ocean farming is too difficult for our species. But our people are weak from eating processed nutrients. We dream of fresh vegetables. Is it true that humans can teach plants to grow in any environment? Jizik worked 18 hours a day, trying to answer every request. His team of agricultural specialists had grown from 5 people to over 300, but they still couldn't keep up with the demand. Half the galaxy wanted to learn human growing methods, while the other half wanted to ban them. The crisis reached its peak when human-grown food proved to have unexpected healing properties. Vegetables grown with human techniques somehow cured diseases that had plagued certain species for generations. Fruits that humans had simply asked to be as healthy as possible turned out to contain nutrients that no one had ever seen before. The medical consortium confirmed that beings who ate human-grown food showed improvements in health, energy, and even mental clarity. This discovery terrified the established food producers even more than the economic competition. They are changing the very nature of food itself, Elder Vorthak declared during an emergency guild session. This goes beyond agriculture. They are somehow making plants that can heal and strengthen in ways that should be impossible. The galaxy stood at a crossroads, divided between fear of change and hope for a better future. In quiet corners of space, hungry beings dreamed of gardens that could feed their children. In corporate boardrooms, powerful merchants plotted to stop the human agricultural revolution before it destroyed their ancient monopolies. The universe was about to learn whether fear or hope would win. Dr. Kim Miho stood in his laboratory, surrounded by plants that shouldn't exist. Tomatoes grew in spirals that bent through space itself. Carrots had learned to glow softly in the dark. Apple trees bore fruit that changed colors with the seasons, even though they were inside a space station. After 2 years of studying his own discovery, he finally understood what was really happening. It's not the fertilizer, he announced to the group of scientists and alien representatives gathered in his lab. His voice was quiet but filled with certainty. It's not the techniques or the timing or any of the things we thought were important. It's something much simpler and much more impossible. Dr. On Soo-young, his research partner, nodded as she displayed holographic data in the air above them. The quantum readings showed patterns that had taken months to decode. We've been measuring the wrong things, she said. We thought we were looking at plant growth, but we were actually watching reality respond to human emotions. Elder Vorthak's ancient bark creaked with confusion. The tree-like being had traveled from the far edge of the galaxy to witness this explanation. His leaves, which had been deep purple with worry, now shifted to yellow with curiosity. Emotions cannot influence quantum mechanics. This contradicts all known laws of physics. Miho walked over to a small pot containing a single sunflower seed. "Watch," he said simply. He knelt down beside the pot and spoke to it like he was talking to an old friend. "Hello, little seed. I know you're just sleeping in the dark soil, but I want you to know that I care about you. I hope you'll grow up strong and beautiful. I believe you can become the most amazing sunflower anyone has ever seen." As he spoke, the air around the pot began to shimmer. The seed didn't just sprout, it exploded into growth, becoming a full sunflower in seconds. But this wasn't just any sunflower. Its petals were every shade of yellow and gold imaginable, and they seemed to pulse gently with warm light. "Impossible," whispered Christinine, her diamond body reflecting the flower's glow. "Our species has studied quantum agriculture for millennia. Emotional states cannot affect matter at the subatomic level." "Can't they?" Dr. On pulled up more data. "Our sensors show that when humans feel strong emotions about plants, love, worry, hope, even sadness, we create tiny ripples in space-time. It's like our feelings reach out and touch the quantum fields that control how matter behaves." The revelation had taken months to understand. Humans weren't breaking the laws of physics. They were using laws that other species had never discovered. The universe, it seemed, was far more alive and responsive than anyone had imagined. Guild Speaker Lim Dehi, who had become the bridge between humanity and the galactic agricultural community, stepped forward. "My grandmother used to say that plants could feel your emotions. She would get sad if her flowers looked unhappy, and excited when new buds appeared. We always thought she was just being sentimental. Your grandmother understood something that our most advanced civilizations missed," Elder Vorthak admitted, his leaves now turning a soft green color that meant wonder. "We approached agriculture as a science of control. You approach it as a relationship of care." The New Eden Protocol was born from this understanding. Instead of teaching other species human techniques, Earth's agricultural teams began teaching them how to form emotional connections with the plants they grew. The results were extraordinary. The rigid crystal farmers of Kepler, 442b, learned to sing lullabies to their mineral gardens and discovered that their crops grew stronger and more beautiful when they felt loved. The logical Zephyrians found that worrying about their trees' happiness somehow made the forest more resilient and healthy. "It's working," reported Dr. Han Jiziak from the Outer Rim territories. The kelp shepherds started telling bedtime stories to their underwater gardens, and now their sea vegetables are producing oxygen at twice the normal rate. The mushroom priests began meditating with their fungi instead of just tending them, and their harvests have tripled. But the most amazing changes happen on forgotten worlds, the places that have been deemed too poor or too damaged for successful agriculture. When desperate farmers learned to approach their struggling crops with genuine love and hope instead of frustration and fear, miracles began happening. On the desert world of Keth 7, where nothing had grown for centuries, a farmer named Zixanael followed the human method. Instead of trying to force plants to survive in the harsh conditions, he asked them to help heal his dying world. Within a year, the desert was blooming with flowers that could survive without water and trees that purified the toxic soil. Dr. Kim Miho stood in the New Eden Memorial Garden on Earth 5 years later, watching children from dozens of different species playing among impossible plants. Each flower, tree, and vegetable responded to the emotions of those around it, creating a living symphony of growth and change. A small girl with blue skin and silver eyes ran up to him, holding a flower that glowed pink with happiness. "Dr. Kim, why do the plants like us so much?" Miho smiled and knelt down to her level. "Because we like them first. We care about them and worry about them and hope they'll be happy. And it turns out, when you really care about something, the whole universe tries to help you take care of it." The galaxy had learned that the secret to making anything grow wasn't technology or knowledge or power. It was simply asking nicely and meaning it with your whole heart.